Well, good morning, Heights Church. My name is Robert Watson. I want to welcome those of you joining us online as well. This is actually my first time at Heights Church, so thanks for welcoming me as a guest here in your church. Excited to be here with you guys. Want to just give a quick introduction. So I'm married, have 3 kids. We actually have a picture here of my family. So this is my wife, Lindsay, who you see in the picture. She's here in the service with me. And those are our 3 kids who we just left at home while we came out here. And so on the left-hand side with the glasses, that's Gabriel. He's 13. Corbin is our son on the right-hand side. I think he's 12. And then Emma is our daughter. She's 10 years old. Their ages change every year and like throughout different times of the year. So it's kind of hard to track sometimes, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. But that's our family. We live down in the valley. I met my wife actually through a church event. We both went on a mission trip and got seated next to each other on the airplane. And we went all the way to Africa. We were doing this trip in Africa and there was a small group of us on this team. And on the flight back, I said something to her. Now, note, she's only known me for the couple weeks we were in Africa. And I was jet lagged, so I like to preface it with I was very jet lagged as we were flying back. And I said to her, Lindsay, I have the answer to all of your problems. Which is a terrible setup to begin with. And then the line which I delivered, guys, you're not allowed to use this line for 2 reasons. One, it's my line. The second reason, it's a terrible line. I said, I have the answer to all of your problems. You and I just need to fall madly in love with each other. I told you I was jet lagged, right? And so what she said in response was nothing. Deafening silence. And so I did what any one of us guys would do in that situation. I said, ha ha ha, just kidding. And then just tried to play it off like it was no big deal. But we ended up falling madly in love with each other. Now we have those 3 kids, which is proof that God is a God of miracles, and it worked out after all. So just to encourage all of you, if you're here, maybe you're single or whatever, church is a great place to meet somebody, okay? So that's how I met my wife at church, and yeah, you're in the right place. But that's a little bit about me, my family. I've been in Arizona my whole life, born and raised, and work at a church in the East Valley as the teaching pastor there. But grateful to be here with you guys. What I want to do today is I want to talk about time. And I want to ask the question, if you and I, if we knew how much time we had left, like somehow if we knew how much time we had left, what would we do with the time that we have now? And there's no guarantees. There's no way of knowing like exactly how much time our days are numbered, but we don't know that. We live each day, Lord willing, in preparation for that day. Could be any day. But if you knew actually how much time you had left, what would you do with the time that you have now? Now, I said we can't know exactly how much time we have left, but we do have a thing called life expectancy. And I got on the internet and I searched what's the life expectancy in America. And right now it's 77 years. That's the average. So women, you get to live a little bit longer on average. Men, sorry guys, we live a little bit shorter because we do a lot of dumb stuff, let's just face it. And it kind of lowers that. But the average is 77 years, which means if that held true for me, I have more life in the rearview mirror than I do ahead of me. That means if your retirement age, you're 65 years old, if that average held true, that means you have 12 years left. Welcome to retirement. Cram as much in as you can because you only got 12 years left. If you're 20, you got 57 years left. If you're 80 and above, by the way, congratulations, you did it. You did it. Yeah, way to go. You beat the odds. You beat the game. Way to go. But the Bible teaches this actually, because you guys, why is this guy talking about this? You're like, never bring this guy back here. I know it's a morbid statement that we're talking about. The Bible says, though, this is a worthwhile exercise for us to do. So once in a while, pause and evaluate and go, okay, what am I doing with the most precious resource that I have, which is my time? Time, in fact, it's our most limited resource. And you might think, well, no, it's money. No, you will run out of time before you run out of money. And none of us know when we're going to run out of that time, but we want to pause and we want to make sure we're making the most of the time that God has gifted us with. There's this guy named Moses. If you're not familiar with the Bible, Maybe you saw the movie The Prince of Egypt. Maybe if you're older, you saw Charlton Heston play this character. He's the guy who leads the people of Israel out of slavery, out of Egypt. And his life is kind of divided into these three major chunks. So the first part of his life, he's living in the house of Pharaoh in Egypt. He's kind of part of the royal family. So he lives like royalty for the first 40 years. Then he ends up killing somebody. He goes on the run. He's in the wilderness as a shepherd for 40 years. So he goes from the palace to the pasture in these kind of two chunks of life, two very different 40-year chunks of life. And then at the end of that 40 years, God appears to him in a burning bush. And God says, Moses, you're gonna lead the people. And you're gonna go to Pharaoh and you're gonna tell him to free my people. I've heard their cries. And Moses is like, well, who am I? And God doesn't answer that question. He just says, I will be with you. I will be with you. The God of the universe who spoke all things into existence will be with you, Moses. You're gonna be all right. And so God uses Moses and he leads through Moses. And Moses goes to Pharaoh and Pharaoh keeps saying, no, I'm not gonna let the people go. And God sends plagues. And after the final plague, the plague of judgment, where all the people face judgment for their sin, and the cost of their sin is the loss of their firstborn child. Yet, God says there's a way out. If you provide a sacrifice on your family's behalf, you put the blood of the lamb on your doorpost. When I see the blood, the sacrifice on your behalf, I will pass over you. And it's where we get Passover from, the celebration of Passover, where God's judgment, his wrath, is poured out on another on our behalf. It's a foreshadowing of the gospel, what Jesus would do on our behalf. And so the Passover happens, and now Pharaoh said, okay, you guys can go, and they cross through the Red Sea, this miraculous moment. And now for 40 years, the last 40 years of his life, Moses is gonna lead millions of people through the desert in preparation for the promised land. And he's gonna help train them how to worship God and know God. And so he has all of this perspective. He's lived three very different lives, 40 years each. He has all of this perspective, and Moses would meet face to face with God. So he understands God, he understands people. He's dealt with the royal family, he's dealt with those who are, shepherding out in the pasture, and he's also dealt with this people of Israel who have to learn how to live no longer like slaves. And he writes one of the Psalms in our Bible. It's one of the oldest Psalms that's ever written. It's Psalm 90. And so with all of this perspective, he's about to help us understand time. And notice where he begins. Verse 1 says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. To gain perspective on time, to understand life, he doesn't start with us, he starts with God. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born or brought forth, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So the context for our lives, it's not our generation. It's not, we got the greatest generation. Did they name themselves, by the way? You got boomers, you got, you got Xers, you got millennials, you got all these different generations. He says, that's not the context of our lives. We want to compare to each other. He says, no, that's not the context. No, from everlasting, imagine a timeline, from everlasting, just forever this way, to everlasting, forever this way. This is God's timeline. And the context of your life and my life, our lives, we're somewhere in the middle of that timeline. That the story that is being told, the story that is unfolding, it's not our story, it's God's story. Yet, of all creation, he cherishes people the most, and he invites us to be a part of his story. He invites us to be a part of his timeline from everlasting to everlasting, that even though we're just barely a blip on the map, he invites us to be a part of this eternal thing, this relationship with him. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Verse 3, you turn people back to dust, saying, return to dust, you mortals. Very dark. This is kind of like the most emo part of this psalm that Moses writes. It's just, I picture, like the dark hair and all that. It's like, return to dust, you mortals. But it's true, all of us, just to spoil it for all of us, the death rate does hover right around 100% still. All of us are gonna die. And God brought us from dust, but to dust we are gonna return. And so Moses, again, he's got this perspective, return to dust, you mortals. Our bodies are mortal bodies. These are perishable shells that a soul lives within. You realize you are not a body that has a soul, you are a soul that has a body. And these bodies are temporary. You say, return to dust, you mortals. Verse 4, 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. So I know he's speaking metaphorically, but I went ahead and did the math on this. A watch is 3 hours, which means a year would be 10.8 seconds from God's perspective. So if you live the life expectancy of 77 years, that means your life from birth to the time that you die would be 13 minutes and some change. It goes by quick. And what's fascinating, when you talk to anybody who's older than you are, here's what they'll tell you. Oh, it goes by fast. I remember when we'd have we had 3 babies in 3 years, and so we'd have these kids, and everybody who was older, God bless their hearts, they were just so kind. They'd be like, oh, cherish every moment because it goes by so fast. And I would look at them and I would say, no, it doesn't. Last night took forever because they kept waking up like, this is exhausting. It's not fast, but everybody kept saying it. And now that my kids are getting a little bit older, all of a sudden I'm starting to say it to younger people and I'm going, oh, it goes by fast. And it really does. The problem is the days, they're so long, but the years get shorter and shorter and shorter. Time moves by fast. It's a blink of an eye. And Moses goes on and he talks about God's power, our life's brevity, and then he talks about life expectancy. He says some get 70 years, some, if their strength endures, get 80 years, but it passes by quickly. And then he gets to the point of this whole exercise, this psalm that he's writing, verse 12. He says, teach us to number our days. As he's praying this prayer to God, God, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. The reason why I'm standing up here right now talking about, I know, a very morbid topic is because the goal would be we would walk out of here with a heart of wisdom. That we would pause for just a moment here on this Sunday morning. We would pause and we would just reflect on our lives and go, okay, God, help me to number my days so that I may gain a heart of wisdom. So here's what I want us to do right now. We're going to actually do this exercise right now in church. I have a scale up here. 0 to 80, and imagine this being the timeline of your life. And I want you to plot in your mind on that chart right now, where are you? Where are you on that chart? Could be you just graduated high school. Well, you're already like a quarter of the way done. You realize that? And we think, oh, I have my whole life ahead of me. Well, minus the 25% you already used up. And I rounded up to 80 because I'm an optimist. I know the life expectancy is 77, but picture where are you on there? And now here's the deal. Some of you might look at that and this might be a little bit disheartening. And I would say, don't let it be. You might be looking at that scale and thinking, man, I wish I could relive the past. I wish I would have lived differently. That's not the goal of this exercise. The past is the past. You cannot relive the past. But by God's grace, you can redeem the present. And with God's help, you can redeem the future. The goal of this exercise is that we may gain a heart of wisdom. God, how much time might I have and what can I do with that time? Under your leadership, under your guidance, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. James, who's the half-brother of Jesus, he writes in James chapter 4, and he talks about time and he talks about the future. He says this, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this city or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money, while you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. He says there's no guarantees. So it's not an exercise where we're promised anything. No, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? And then he answers this question. He says, you are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Here's what he says. What is your life? Here it is. You're a mist. And now it's gone. Hang on, I'll do it again. Right there. That's it. Wait, I see. Okay. Bless you. One more time for those of you who might have missed it. This is your life. That's it. It is a mist that appears for one moment and then it is gone. All of you in the front row, I'm sorry about that. But you guys, Grasp this in your mind that life goes by fast. Moses is telling us life goes by fast. James is telling us that life goes by fast. Everybody who's older than you, who's talked to you, who's seen you, if you've held a baby or whatever and said, oh, it goes by fast, they're telling you it goes by fast. Do you know why everybody says that? Because it goes by fast, yeah. Because it's true. And so we want to pause. We want to gain a heart of wisdom. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is our one and only life. And here's the reality. How we spend our time is how we are spending our life. Two most spiritual documents that I own. Number one, it's my Bible. This is where I receive instruction from God. This is God's word to us. It's a love letter to you and to me that we might know him. We might know who we are, that we might be understanding of how life works, how relationships work. This is our guide. This is the most spiritual document I own. The second is my calendar, my schedule. This is where I receive wisdom from God. My schedule is where I apply that wisdom, how I spend my time, how I spend my energies, how I am spending my life. And so the goal is we would pause, we would think about, okay, what am I doing with the time that God has given me? I read a book by a hospice nurse. And this hospice nurse, she would spend time with those who were in their last days on this earth as their bodies were failing. And she began, as she built relationships with all of these individuals over the years, she began to ask questions. And one of the questions that she asked, and I thought this is a bold question, but she would ask it and she would get honest answers. She said, do you have any regrets? What regrets do you have in your life? And she would ask people on their deathbeds. And as they would answer, as she had built trust with these individuals, they would answer her. She began to realize there's a pattern. That there's a pattern. There's things that repeat again and again, life after life after life. And the pattern was this, 3 things that she writes about in her regrets of the dying. Top 3. Number 1, I wish I was true to myself. And I didn't try to live up to everybody else's expectations. So many of us, our calendars are dictated by what we think everybody else wants of us, not what God has for us. I wish I was true to myself. Number 2, I wish I didn't work so hard. She wrote this. She was writing about a generation where pretty much all of the men would work, and for that generation, a lot of the women would be at home. 100% of the men said, I wish I didn't work so hard. And then as she began to ask, she started to hear the women say the same thing. She writes, all the men interviewed regretted spending so much of their lives on the treadmill of a work existence. Third thing, I wish I would have dealt with issues sooner rather than later. I wish I didn't carry around bitterness and resentment. Here's what they're saying. I wish I would have cared more for the relationships in my life. Everything they're talking about is relational. None of them talked about the stuff that they had. It didn't matter what kind of car they used to drive, what their home looked like. In the end, all that matters is God and people. Bronnie writes, all that remains in the final weeks are love and relationships. That's it. We would be wise to learn from their example. We would be wise to learn from those who have gone before us. You can't go back and relive time, but you can redeem it. Choose to leave nothing unsaid. Choose to invest in what matters most. That's relationships. I had a mentor once ask me, he said, hey, what would your schedule look like? What would your schedule look like if God was actually the one in charge of it? See, because we say, hey, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to follow Jesus with my life. And yeah, for a lot of us, the thing that we tend to follow Jesus with first or trust him with first is salvation. Jesus, I trust you that you paid the penalty for my sin on the cross. I'm trusting that you are that sacrifice on my behalf so that judgment will pass over me and will say yes to following Jesus in that area and go, I trust you with my eternity. But man, when it comes to my present, I don't know. Man, when it comes to my workplace, when it's about, my marriage or my parenting or my friendships or my dating life, I don't know, Jesus, if I can trust you with that. And I want to challenge us, hey, if we can trust Jesus with all eternity, if we could trust Jesus with all salvation, all rescue on God's behalf for us, I think we can trust him with something like our schedule. and go, Jesus, what would this look like if you were in charge of my schedule? If you helped organize my calendar? I used to struggle with very debilitating anxiety attacks and struggled with some deep anxiety to the point I went and met with a counselor. And I sat down with this counselor, and this counselor began to help me think through what would my schedule look like if God were in charge of it. And so I'm going to share with you an exercise that he did with me, and I had to pay for it. You guys get it for free today. You're welcome. We said, let's just talk about everything that you have going on in your life. Let's just write it all out. And so we wrote out everything, and he said, okay, that's a lot. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to start categorizing it into different lists. We're going to make a list of things that you're just going to stop doing. Things that you're going to do more of, things you're going to do less of, and some things that you're going to start doing that you're not currently doing that are good for you. And so we started working through this list, and we started saying, okay, what if God was in charge of my schedule? What would my life look like? And so for some of you, you need to come up with a list. You need to write down, okay, what do I need to add to my schedule? Let's start with adding, which some of you, you're so stressed out, you're like, I can't add anything to my schedule. That's why I want to add a couple things. Because you're probably too busy to where these things have been pushed out. Because when our schedules get busy, when things get chaotic, here's what gets pushed out: time with God and rest. We'll push out time with God and we'll push out rest. Yet these are two of the most important things for you and for me, for our souls. Which, by the way, you're at church, you're watching online, way to go. You guys are doing something for your souls right now. This is good. To gather together, to spend time worshiping. The band does a phenomenal job. I'm so blessed just to stay here and worship along with you guys. To just take our focus and our attention and put it on our good God who loves us. To spend time opening God's word and learning from it together and encouraging one another. This is good for our souls. Here's what Matthew 11:28, this is Jesus talking, says, and I want you to hear this, not as just a verse in the Bible, a general verse. I want you to hear this as Jesus' words to you. Jesus says this, come to me. It's an invitation. Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. God's will for your life is that you would experience rest. In fact, God developed a schedule that each week you and I are to take a time where we just stop working, and we're not human doings, we are human beings. We just enjoy the creation that God has made, that God has gifted us with, and we pause and we reflect and we pray and we spend time with family, that we would do that every single week. It's called a Sabbath. Jesus says, come to me. It's an invitation, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And then he says this, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. And that term yoke, I don't know kind of who we have here in the room. Do we have any oxen farmers in the room? Okay, no, okay. It's Prescott. I thought maybe, I don't know. For those of us who aren't oxen farmers, a yoke, it's this wooden thing that connects two oxen together. And for those that Jesus was talking to at the time, they would all see this very clearly, and it allows them to plow together, but they walk in step with one another when they're yoked together. And here's how I picture it. Jesus is saying this, let me just put my arm around you. Let me just walk alongside you. When Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, he's saying, no. Let's do this together. Let's walk in step with one another. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. When Jesus says, take my yoke upon you, I believe Jesus is saying, learn from my example. Learn my pace. Jesus doesn't walk fast. He walks slowly. Here's why I know that. When you read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're the first 4 books of your New Testament. They're kind of like the biographies of Jesus. When you read through those, Jesus is constantly being interrupted. Majority of his ministry is just interruption. Somebody goes to Jesus, he's teaching, and he goes, hey, my daughter's dying, can you come here? And Jesus is like, okay, let's go. And as he's going, somebody touches his cloak, and he goes, oh, I felt like this power leave me or whatever, and there's a woman who has need. He stops. This guy's daughter is dying, and he stops, and he is fully present for this woman. Like she's the only person who exists, and gives her all the time in the world. And then he goes and he heals this guy's daughter. But Jesus was interruptible. Jesus would walk at a pace where people could stop him. And he would stop what he was doing. People could cry out, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And he would stop what he was doing and he would go and he would minister to those individuals. His pace was at a slow enough pace where he was interruptible. And so my question for us, if you're here and you're a follower of Jesus, are you interruptible? Is there enough margin? Is there enough space in your life where you can be interrupted for whatever God is bringing to you? Because oftentimes God's interruptions are actually invitations to great ministry, something far greater than we would have come up with on our own. We're walking at the pace of Jesus. What do we need to add to our schedule? Jesus, who, by the way, is the most successful person in the history of mankind. He accomplished a lot in a few years. And if you go, "Robert, I'm just too busy. I have too many things going on." Here's what Jesus would do. He would get up early while it was still dark. He'd go to a quiet place and he would just spend time with God. Which, if Jesus needs to spend time with Jesus, you and I need to spend time with Jesus. Some of us need to add that to our schedule where we just pause and we just spend time with God. Where we create margin, where we're just gonna rest. We're gonna pause from working. We need to add rest to our schedules. The next question is, what do you need to remove from your schedule? What do I need to remove from my schedule? When I made that list with my counselor, I was having anxiety attacks. We had this little side business that was doing well, making money, all of that, but it was just taking up time. And so we made a decision, my wife and I, to stop doing this side business, to intentionally make less money. It was like the most un-American thing I've ever done. I was like, no, I'm gonna stop this and I'm gonna make less, but it's gonna buy us more time together. And I haven't once regretted it. Some of us, we have things in our life that are taking up time and they might even be good things, but it's not the most important thing. Some of us need to remove some things from our schedule to make time for what matters most, which is God and people. What do I need to do more of? So things I need to add, things I need to take away. Some things I'm doing, I just need to do more of it. If you're a parent, sharing meals together with your kids is really important. Spending time around a dinner table, looking at your kids, asking them how their day was. What's something good that happened today? What's something bad that happened today? We call it highs and lows. We do it as a family. Ask questions, learn about their friends. That time around a dinner table together, studies have shown, is one of the most valuable times in raising a child. To have uninterrupted time around a meal, at least once a day. Some of us, we need to add that to our schedule. We need to do more of that. If you're here and you're married, some of us, we need to add more dates to our schedule. Dates with our spouse. My wife and I, when we had 3 kids in 3 years, we stopped dating each other. And again, we went and we saw a counselor, and the counselor helped point this out to us. You guys are getting so much free counseling right now. And so we put it on our schedule now. Once a week, her and I, we have a date without kids. Yesterday, we paddleboarded Lynx Lake. We got up here early, and we just floated and enjoyed each other, enjoyed our conversation. Some of you, you need to do more dates with your spouse. What is it you need to add to your schedule? And lastly, what do I need to do less of? What am I currently doing that I need to do less of? I think for a lot of us, we need less time on our phones. I was on an airplane and my phone broke. And when I say broke, like it broke, like wouldn't turn on. And it was a long flight, cross country, and it was the beginning of the flight. So I panicked. I'm trying to reset this thing. The barf bag has a little metal wire in there, and I like took it out. I'm trying to MacGyver, like reset the phone. Like I was desperate. And eventually when I realized this thing isn't gonna work, I started looking around and I realized everybody was just glued to their phones. Nobody was interacting with each other. And I looked out the window of the airplane, because I always like the window seat, and I look out the window and it was beautiful. And it was like this moment in WALL-E where all of a sudden the technology broke and I realized, what a beautiful world we live in. So many things that I'm missing, all of these people around me and all this beautiful creation. And for so many of us, we're just so glued to our phones. We think technology connects us. It actually isolates us from one another. And it just it doesn't give you more time, it takes time away. The app is called TikTok. Time is ticking away. Literally, it's called tick tock, tick tock. Like, this is our time, guys. This is how we're spending our lives. Some of us, we need to find a power button, which you didn't even know existed on your phone, and like turn it off. Put it away. Spend more time in conversation. Learn to ask questions. Look people in the eye and listen. You'll be amazed. People are amazing. People are interesting. They're fascinating. But we need to take a moment and actually show interest to discover that. In the end, all that matters is God and people. What are we doing with our one and only life? Choose today. God, I want you to be in charge of my schedule. I don't want to just let life happen to me and one day wake up and go, wow, that went by fast. Be intentional. Spend time in rest. Spend time with God. Spend time with others. Turn the technology off. Learn to number your days that you may gain a heart of wisdom. Would you pray with me? Father, for each of us, may we take your word to heart. God, as we spend time with you, as we spend time even right now gathered together worshiping you, God, may we learn to receive your love, your mercy, your grace, to take your yoke upon us, to walk alongside you. May we learn of your love and experience your love, and then may we not just let it stop with us, but share it with others, give it away. Jesus, you said the most important thing, if we took all of the Bible and summed it up, is to love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. God, may we receive your love and may we share it with others and make the most of the days that we have. God, we give you our schedules. Would you lead us? We pray. In Jesus' name, amen.